Exposed. 6 sinister rules that will haunt you in a spine-chilling monster circus. The carnival was in town, and with it came an unsettling excitement that prickled Sarah's skin. She tried her best to shake it off, but as she glanced at the bright lights and cheerful laughter hovering just beyond the entrance, a chill crept into her bones. Every year, the sights and sounds of the festival thrilled the kids. Tonight, however, felt different, like the whispering winds that hinted at secrets best forgotten. Danny and Lily tugged eagerly at her sleeves, their faces painted by the glow of colorful lights. "Can we go, Mommy? Please." They were eager, but Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. Her heart had already been stretched thin with worry. Each bill, every pleading voice from creditors weighing her down. The promise of a few hours of joy was enticing, but there was an undercurrent of dread she couldn't ignore. As they stepped into the carnival, the atmosphere thickened around them. The laughter of children swirled with the haunting melody of a calliope, a tune that felt almost skeletal, hollow. There was an excitement among the crowd, but a shadow of something darker played at the edges of it. The monster circus sat before them, a towering tent filled with anticipation and sinister whispers. The ringmaster, a man draped in a frayed tailcoat, stood by the entrance, his smile surprisingly sharp. His top hat seemed to cast a shadow over his unmoving eyes, and it sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Welcome, welcome!" His voice struck like thunder, booming over the cacophony. "You are now part of our world, filled with 6 sinister rules. Break one and face the consequences." Children squealed in delight, but Sarah felt a cold sweat breaking on her forehead. The other parents exchanged nervous glances, but laughter soon erupted, lulling fears into submission. Still, the air crackled with something ominous. The performers burst forth, twisting and writhing with strange fluidity, yet every act felt tainted, as though they danced on the edge of despair. Suddenly, the ringmaster returned, his voice slicing through the merriment. "Some who disobey the rules will disappear. Who do you trust?" He scanned the crowd, and Sarah swore his gaze lingered on her. Panic throttled her chest. The familiar faces of neighbors she trusted flickered for a moment, becoming unsettling masks she'd never seen before. That moment, Lily's small voice broke through the chaos. "Mommy, there's someone behind the curtain." Her eyes were wide, terror evident as she pointed. "A child, but they don't have a face." Sarah's heart raced. She turned to look just as the figure vanished. The realization sank like a stone. This was more than just a carnival. It was a trap. The laughter that had once felt warm now pressed down on her like a heavy fog, cloaking her in dread. Every beat of her heart pulsed with urgency. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Shivers rippled through the audience as more kids began to cry, their tears joining the sinister whispers surrounding them. That eerie feeling intensified, tightening around Sarah, stealing her breath, and then the ringmaster laughed. It resonated through the tent, unsettling yet hypnotic. The screams of laughter took on a desperate tone as the lights flickered ominously. As the tent grew dimmer, shadows began to dance, and the reality of the carnival started to twist. It was no longer just the thrill of the rides. It was a maze of horror. Was this her escape, or the Pandora's box she'd never wanted to open? The ringmaster surveyed them with a knowing smirk, and as the crowd's joy turned into a cacophony of panic, Sarah fought the urge to flee. Now, more than ever, she needed to protect her children. But could she? Would breaking the rules sign their doom? The darkness loomed ahead, promising secrets that could either tear them apart or set them free. Fear tightened around Sarah like a vice as the ringmaster beckoned them further into the darkness of the tent. The colorful lights flickered ominously one last time before plunging the massive space into an unsettling dimness. Danny clutched her hand tightly, his small fingers trembling, while Lily's wide eyes darted from one shadow to the next. "Mommy, I don't like it," Danny whispered, his fear palpable. "Me neither," Lily whimpered, her grip on Sarah's arm tightening. The tent felt like it was breathing, each inhale full of laughter that clawed at Sarah's sanity. Tears of fear streamed down the children's faces, a stark contrast to the forced smiles of those around them. They were all actors in a sick play, and Sarah could feel it deep in her bones. "Stick together," Sarah urged, forcing calm into her voice even as her gut twisted with apprehension. She scanned the edges of the crowd, spotting figures lurking just beyond the light. The performers moved like shadows, their faces hidden, their laughter unsettlingly disjointed. It was as if the joyous atmosphere was a masquerade, hiding something dark and sinister beneath without warning. The ringmaster's booming voice called out again, cutting through the rising panic. "Who will be the brave ones? Who will face the challenge?" His gaze swept over the crowd, his eyes locking onto Sarah's for a heartbeat that stretched like taffy in the air. "Remember, rules bind you. Disobey and you may never leave." As dread twisted in her chest, the tent began to contract, closing in like a predator. A jagged scream erupted from somewhere deep within the darkness, echoing painfully against the canvas walls. It was not just the sound of terror. It was the sound of despair. Children shrieked, parents shouted, and the tent quivered with chaos. "Take a step back," Sarah shouted, ushering her children behind her. She felt their tiny bodies press against her as she fought the swell of terror threatening to sweep them all away. "Let us go. We have to get out," Danny yelled, pulling against her grasp. But there was nowhere to go. In every direction, the shadows loomed larger, twisting like an outstretched hand waiting to grab them. The entryway now felt as far away as the horizon. "Stay close." Sarah squeezed their hands, her heart racing. The ringmaster was still watching, his smile spreading wider as the fear spread around them like an infectious mist. "Trust me," whispered a voice from the sidelines, low and gravelly. A figure emerged, draped in shadows. The face was obscured, but the kindness in the tone offered a flicker of hope. "This way. Follow me." Sarah hesitated. "Trust? In this place?" But the whispering shadows of the tent grew louder, pulsing with urgency. She eased forward, a leap of faith that felt like stepping onto a knife's edge. The children glanced up at her, eyes wide and pleading, urging her to make the right choice. "Come on." The figure beckoned again, retreating into the darkness. The ringmaster's laughter echoed, a chilling reminder of the consequences they might face if they lingered. With one last glance around, she took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. "This way. We have to follow," she murmured, pushing her children ahead of her, closer to the figure as they moved deeper into the tent. The reality of their choices began to haunt her. In a place where breaking the rules could mean vanishing, what price would they pay to escape? Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The sinister laughter escalated, growing into a roar. The lights dimmed even further, swallowed by the dark. Sarah's heart raced. Could this be their only way out? Or was it another trap? Just ahead, she heard the distant sound of bells ringing, calling them deeper into the heart of the unknown. What awaited them in that shadowy abyss? As Sarah pressed onward, the dimness closed in around them like a fog, thick and cloying. The distant sound of bells echoed, a warped melody that seemed to play tricks on her mind. Each chime resonated deep in her chest, a dissonant reminder that time was slipping away. "Where are we going?" Danny asked, his voice barely a whisper now, trembling with uncertainty. "I don't know, honey, but we need to keep moving," Sarah replied, forcing a calm she didn't feel. She gripped Danny's hand tighter as they followed the shadowy figure, who turned back only briefly, urging them to hurry, as if sensing the danger lurking just beyond the veil of darkness. The stench of damp earth and something rotten permeated the air. It felt alive, weaving through the fabric of the tent like a serpent seeking its prey. The laughter of the crowd still echoed, but it now sounded far off, like a cruel spectator watching their despair unfold with glee. Suddenly, A horrific screech tore through the quiet, and Sarah's heart raced as she glanced back. The flicker of fading lights revealed something moving in the shadows, a silhouette not belonging to the figure who led them, but something grotesque and lumbering, something hungry. "Keep going. Move," she shouted, panic spilling into her voice. They stumbled forward, urgency gripping her like a vice. Just ahead, the figure turned sharply, leading them toward an archway covered in draping black fabric. "Through here. Quickly," it urged. Sarah's gaze darted back, the sinister shape now emerging from the darkness, its eyes alight with a malevolent glow. It was almost there. They ducked through the archway, and Sarah stumbled into an alleyway that seemed cut from the very fabric of nightmares. Evocative banners hung low, each depicting scenes of terror. Faces twisted in agony, limbs contorted in unnatural ways, all festooned with a metallic sheen that made Sarah feel sick. "Why did we come here? Why didn't we just leave?" Lily whimpered, her voice fractured by sobs. Before Sarah could respond, a loud crash erupted from behind them. The figure's urgency shifted to desperation. "You must remember the rules," it shouted, its silhouette twisting like a marionette in a storm. "What rules?" Sarah yelled, fear flooding through her. She could feel the pressure building, the terror of the crowd and the shadows melding into a single, oppressive force. "Rule number 1, the figure began, barely managing to keep them calm as it waved an arm toward the banners lining the walls. "Do not look back. What you leave behind will come for you." The ground quaked again, and an eerie laughter rippled through the air, threading into her mind, tightening around her thoughts like a noose. Without hesitation, she pressed further into the alley, where the walls seemed to close in, pulsing with the echoes of lost souls. The atmosphere sharpened, a frantic energy swirling around them. "Mommy, I can't," Danny cried, falling to his knees. Get up, Sarah pleaded, adrenaline surging through her. "Why are we still here?" The figure pleaded, eyes now wide with fear. "You must follow. There are 5 more rules. The last one is the worst." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. They were trapped in a waking nightmare, an audience for something unspeakable. The laughter grew louder, clawing at their minds. Could there be escape from this horrific carnival? "Show us the way," she yelled, pulling her children along, determination solidifying inside her. The figure hesitated for only a moment before turning back. "Then listen and do not defy." But the air shifted, a darkness descending, as a blaring horn honked from the shadows, a signal, perhaps, that something worse lurked just beyond the edge of sanity. As they dived deeper into the uncertain abyss, dread fell over them like a shroud, questions echoing. What were the rules, and what would they owe in return for their escape? With the sinister laughter swelling around them, Sarah knew only one thing for sure. In this world, fear was just the beginning. What monstrous fate awaited them at the end of these twisted rules? The figure pressed onward, its form shifting in the dim light. Despite the fear gnawing at Sarah's insides, she found herself fixated on the words that echoed through her mind. 6 rules. 6 twisted, ghastly rules. "Stay close," she whispered to Danny and Lily, scanning the cavernous alley they had entered. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing as if the very structure was alive. Each step was heavy with dread, the stillness occasionally punctured by whimpers and rustling from the shadows. "We have to remember them, Danny," she urged. "What did it say? What were the rules?" Danny blinked, confusion etched on his small face. I don't know." He squeezed his eyes shut, desperate to block out the growing horror. "Focus," Sarah said, forcing her own voice to steady. She held both children close, feeling their hearts beat wildly against her waist. The figure, still ahead, turned abruptly, its voice now a dreadful hiss. "Rule number 2. Do not wander off. The creatures know your fear, and they will find you." A chill raced through Sarah, spreading goosebumps across her skin. She glanced at the yawning darkness that lurked just beyond the alley, where shadows coalesced into grotesque shapes. What lived in that shadow? What hunted in the night? "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily whimpered, her small fingers gripping Sarah as tightly. Just then, the horn blasted again, loud and jarring. It echoed off the alley walls, a herald of something approaching. The figure jerked in an anxious dance, its eyes wide. Hurry! Into the next corridor. There's no time. They hurtled forward, the children struggling to keep up. The air grew denser, saturated with a coppery scent that made Sarah gag. Closer they came to the next passage, an archway that pulsed with a dull glow, like a heartbeat. 3. Trust no one, the figure shouted as they stumbled through the arch. Even those who seem friendly may wish to steal your hope. As they entered, the corridor narrowed painfully. Strange paintings adorned the walls, faces contorted in pure terror, mouths stretched in silent screams. The laughter echoed again, mingling with a cacophony of low growls that reverberated through the air. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore," Danny cried, panic flooding his voice. "Neither do I. Just keep moving," Sarah shouted, her heart hammering against her ribs. She felt the invisible weight of eyes upon them, studying, scrutinizing. Suddenly, an arm reached out from behind a curtain of shadows, clawed and gnarled. Sarah yanked the children back just in time, their breath hitching in unison. The claw retreated, but it hadn't gone far. "For never lose hope. Hope is your only weapon," the figure insisted, its face half hidden in the gloom. "If you lose hope, you are lost forever." "What does that even mean?" Sarah shouted, frustration and terror clamoring for dominance. The figure shook its head, eyes darting nervously. "The time is short. You must remember the last." The ground trembled suddenly, a fierce rumble that nearly knocked them off their feet. The walls shuddered, and the laughter rose to a fever pitch, shrill and mocking. 5. Do not hold on to guilt, the figure's voice cracked. "It will consume you before the night ends." "Mommy," Lily wailed, her small face distorted in fear. "What do we do? What do we do?" The laughter grew louder, the sounds reverberating from every direction. Shadows began to slither closer, curling like smoke around their ankles. Sarah's breath caught. There was no escaping the tightening grip of the shadows. "Hold on, just hold on," she cried, dragging them along. A new horn blared, a cacophony of doom, growing closer and crescendoing into a chaotic symphony of despair. Just one more rule," the figure pleaded, but its words were swallowed by another shriek that whirled through the air like a storm. What could the last rule? But before she could finish, a massive figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with an unholy fire. Sarah froze, her heart racing, time itself seeming to slow. What awaited them on the other side of this nightmare? And at what cost would their escape come? In that moment, Sarah's mind spun, and as the shadows closed in, she realized she might not be strong enough to break their hold. What horror did the last rule promise? The creature loomed, its bulk absorbing the feeble light of the corridor. Claws, jagged and dripping with something black and foul, caught Sarah's gaze. She felt a rising wave of terror crash over her, her breath hitching as the shadow stretched, forming monstrous shapes that danced grotesquely. "Keep moving," she screamed, yanking Danny and Lily further into the corridor, her voice breaking under the pressure. The children cried out, their tiny forms pressed against her in desperation. The figure that had guided them faltered, caught between the shadows and their escape. "Remember, you don't have much time," it hissed before the darkness swallowed it whole, leaving only the echoes of its voice behind. They dashed forward, the laughter still ringing in their ears, an unsettling melody that twisted Sarah's gut. Time stretched, each pulse of her heart a reminder of the looming threat. The air around them thickened, saturated with a mix of fear and something sour that made her want to retch. The corridor widened abruptly, revealing a twisted carnival ground sprawled out before them. The spectacle was horrifying, a nightmarish fusion of a carnival and a graveyard. Tattered banners flapped in the wind, while flickering lights cast unsettling shadows across the scene. Broken rides stood like skeletal remains, dripping with the rust of neglect. "Danny, stay close," she hissed, pulling them into the chaotic scene. Danny's small hand clutched hers tightly, but Lily, overwhelmed by the clamor, began to lag behind. "Mommy, look!" Lily pointed to a dimly lit booth. Beneath its flickering light, a green-faced clown stood grinning maniacally. His mouth stretched too wide, too unnatural. "Step right up, little girl. Win a prize for the brave." He cackled, eyes glinting with malice. Something twisted in Sarah's gut at the sight. She wanted to shield her children from that horrid thing, but a part of her screamed for her to understand. Was this part of the rules? "No," Sarah barked, pulling Lily back. "We can't stop. We can't trust them." The laughter rose again, this time intermingling with the sound of footsteps echoing from somewhere behind them. They were not alone. Panic raced through her veins, and the threat of the unseen thing clawed at her insides. Just as she turned to lead the children deeper into the chaos, a shadow flickered in her peripheral vision. An idea lodged itself in her mind. Could this carnival hold the answers? The rules spun in her head, a riddle tied to survival. She felt she had to return to the source. "Help me! I need to find the figure," she shouted, but doubt clawed at her mind. What if it was already gone, consumed by the horror lurking? The shadows closed in, whispering truths and lies. "Hope is your only weapon," repeated in a mocking sing-song. She shivered, wondering if hope could stand against the fear that threatened to devour her and her children whole. "Which way? Which way?" Danny cried, his face wet with terror. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore." Lily sobbed, her voice desperate. Sarah felt trapped between the laughter of the grotesque and the impending shadows creeping in from all sides. The carnival loomed, each ride a twisted memory of joy, now a facade for despair. The figure's voice echoed in her thoughts, yet the last piece was still missing. 5 was guilt, 6 what s 6? An icy finger ran down her spine as she realized the 6th rule was more than just a rule. It was a reckoning. The cacophony of chaos surrounded them, laughter and screams merging into a horrific symphony that sent shivers through her whole being. With darkness tightening around her like a noose, she grasped her children, ready to plunge deeper into the horrific carnival. What terror awaited them if they dared to confront the 6th rule? And what haunting memories did this carnival hold that could unravel them? The carnival lights flickered erratically, casting long shadows that clawed at the ground like desperate limbs reaching for salvation. Sarah squeezed Danny and Lily's hands tighter as they stumbled into the thrumming heart of the twisted fairground. Every sound felt amplified, the distant laughter of the damned mingling with the creaks and groans of rusted rides long forgotten. They dodged between precarious wooden stalls, their surfaces rotted and uneven. The scent of something burnt and sweet tugged at her senses, cotton candy gone to ash, or perhaps a memory of sugary delight now curdled with decay. "Mommy, where do we go?" Danny whimpered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just keep close. We'll find." A piercing scream cut through the fabric of their despair, silencing the laughter momentarily. It pierced through Sarah's heart, full of pain and sheer terror. She felt as though it had crawled inside her, festering alongside the dread that had burrowed there. She turned toward the sound, her instincts screaming at her. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking into the depths of the carnival. Something stirred there, hidden behind the curtain of darkness. There was a tale to tell, she was certain of it. As they pressed forward, they came across a house of mirrors. A dusty sign hung askew above the entrance. "Enter if you dare." The mirrors glimmered ominously, but it wasn't the glass reflections that caught her breath in her throat. It was the faint outline of silhouettes, twisted and distorted, appearing within the mirrors as if beckoning. "Mommy, I don't want to." Lily shivered, pressing against Sarah's leg. "They're just tricks, honey. We need answers." What was lurking inside? Was it madness that awaited them? Or a truth, raw and untamed? Sarah stepped cautiously toward the entrance, the children hesitating, eyes wide with fear. As she pushed the creaky door open, a chill gust set her teeth on edge. It smelled of dust, despair, and something far more sinister. Inside, the mirrors distorted their reflections into grotesqueries. Sarah's face was stretched abnormally long, Danny's eyes bulging unnaturally, and Lily's grin was wide yet hollow. The laughter echoed again, now confined within the glass, mixing with the cries of lost souls trapped in this horrific game. Which way? Danny squeaked, his voice trembling. I don't know. Suddenly, one of the mirrors rippled like water, and Sarah leaned closer, transfixed. Images flickered inside herself as a child, at a real carnival, laughing with her parents. But then it shifted, a dark image creeping in fear, desperation, shadows that consumed everything they touched. Mommy, I'm scared. Lily trembled, her fingers digging into Sarah's arm. Stay close, Sarah urged, her heart pounding. They had to find the truth to survive. But what if the truth was worse? Then something shifted in the mirrored room. A monstrous figure lunged at the glass, its eyes ablaze with a hunger that sent chills down her spine. It wasn't trapped after all. The monsters wore their own flesh. Run! Sarah screamed, her instincts taking over as she pulled her children back. She clutched them tightly, forcing her way back into the chaos outside, where shadows danced in the flickering carnival lights. They were not the only ones running. Figures skittered in the distance, all bearing the same expression of unspeakable horror. The path twisted, redirecting them toward a ride that glimmered with false allure, a Ferris wheel adorned with glistening lights. But as they approached, it lurched, creaking ominously, like a beast awakening from slumber. What if it wants us? Danny whispered, glancing back at the gaping maw of the carnival. Then I won't let it take you. They moved closer to the Ferris wheel, its towering structure looming over them like a sentry of doom. And there, at its base, a small cry echoed, a voice muffled, desperate. Help me! Have they stumbled into more traps? Or a plea that could save them? As the children trembled beside her, Sarah's heart sank. The sixth rule was a siren, and the question burned. Should they answer the call, even if the truth would lay bare the darkest corners of the carnival? As darkness gathered around them, trepidation pooled in her gut. The carnival was alive. What dark bargain awaited them if they dared to reach out? The shadows were thick around them, wrapping Sarah and her children in a suffocating embrace. The voice echoed again, a blend of hope and despair, a chilling lilt that called out from beyond the rusted sepulchre of the Ferris wheel. Help me, Mommy? Lily whimpered, clutching Sarah's leg tighter, her eyes wide and frightened. Danny stepped closer, his brow furrowed in confusion. Should we help? He asked, glancing down at the ground where shadows swirled like whispers of dread. The air grew heavier, pressing down on Sarah's chest as she scanned the area for whoever might be begging for assistance. In her heart, a dark decision brewed. We can't ignore it, she murmured, though doubt gnawed at her with each syllable. No, Danny shouted, his voice cutting through the murky fear. What if it's a trap? Stay close, she commanded, trying to sound more certain than she felt. The allure of that voice, soft yet desperate, tugged at her instincts. It was only a voice, but voices could lead one to safety or to slaughter. She took a deep breath and stepped closer to the Ferris wheel. The steel structure groaned as if alive, the lights dimming momentarily before flickering back to grotesque life. At its base, shadows danced chaotically, some rushing toward her as if trying to escape the very ground they were tethered to. Help me! The cry was louder now, a keening wail that sent shivers coursing through Sarah. But was it a plea for salvation, or a summons to doom? Look, Lily's small voice quavered, pointing to a twisted compartment at the bottom of the ride. Behind a flap of bent metal, a hand emerged, fingers curled in a grip of panic. Before Sarah could process what was happening, Danny surged forward, his short legs carrying him toward the sound. Wait, she yelled, lunging to grab him, but a sudden gust swept through the area, disorienting her. Danny! The shadows erupted like a horror show. They moved, slithering as if they had a mind of their own, swirling around her son, pulling him closer to the mouth of the Ferris wheel. No longer was it the cool metal structure, it was a creature hungry and vast. Danny! He froze, eyes wide with terror, realizing too late the danger that lurked beneath the wheeling lights. Mommy! Help! Her heart twisted as she lunged toward him, a wild desperation fueling her movement. The shadows coiled around both children, dragging them toward the Ferris wheel's maw. She could feel the pulse of the carnival beating in her ears, a rhythm of dread, and the laughter, oh, that horrible laughter started up again, echoing around them. "Let them go," Sarah shouted, pulling against the dark, wielding her fear like a weapon. The shadows pulsed angrily, tightening around her children. The wheels above began spinning madly, faster, generating a wind that tore at her skin. Suddenly, the voice returned, resonating deep and sinister. "Join us, we are all performers here." Struggling against the onslaught, Sarah clutched her children, refusing to let the shadows take them. "We won't become part of your show." Then, in that moment of defiance, the shadows hesitated, slinking back slightly as if unsure how to proceed. But just as she thought she might wrest control of the situation, a deafening crash sounded. The Ferris wheel itself lurched violently, shaking ground beneath their feet. "Run!" The scream erupted from her lips, and she yanked Danny and Lily away from the encroaching darkness, darting towards the nearest escape. Behind them, the twisted voice cried in frustration, mingling with the clatter and disarray of metallic grinds the fury of something thwarted. As they broke free from the immediate grasp of the darkness, the carnival's twisted laughter morphed into wails of rage and sorrow, echoing after them like a haunting chorus. They stumbled ahead, the world blurring into chaotic color, searching for salvation in the depths of despair. "I don't want to play anymore," Danny cried, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Neither do I," Sarah gasped, her breath coming in ragged bursts, drowning in panic. But fate knew they were not free yet. In the distance, the carousel began to spin, lights flashing in a maddening frenzy, calling to them, promising something: truth or torment. "Stay together. We have to." She turned to check on her children when a shriek sliced through the air again. "Help!" the voice repeated, but this time it was not from the Ferris wheel. No, it echoed from the heart of the carousel, a desperate cry that demanded to be answered. Could they escape this torment? Or was it too late? Their only choice lay ahead, where the spinning colors twisted the night. Would they dare take the next step? The answer felt as cursed as the shadows engulfing the carnival. The carousel spun with frantic speed, its painted horses leaping in a dance that was both alluring and horrific. Each revolution cast haunting shadows across Sarah's face, blending with her fear into a thick haze. Danny and Lily clung to her side, eyes wide. The screams calling for help pulled them in like a magnet, shimmering through the chaos. Every fiber of Sarah's being screamed to flee, but something deep within her remained rooted, captivated by the frantic rhythm of the carousel. "Mommy, we have to go." Danny tugged, his voice breaking, panic pulsing through him. "Just a second," she breathed, her heart racing as she searched for the source of the cries. Someone could be in trouble. But even as she reassured him, dread curled in her stomach like a coiled snake. The iron horses whirled past, each flash of color revealing more of the carnival's nightmare, a scene distorted by rapid motion and shadows merging with grotesque smiles painted on the carnival's decaying backdrop. The lights flickered, casting a ghastly glow that made everything around them appear manic and surreal. The air thickened with the scent of popcorn, now suffused with something more rancid, something like decay. "Help me," the voice cried again, a childlike plea that clawed at her heart. It was closer now, almost familiar in its desperation. "Danny, Lily, stick close," she barked, adrenaline surging as she led them forward. She gritted her teeth, unwilling to let the callousness of the carnival steal her resolve. As they moved closer, a shadow broke away from the carousel and darted into the open, revealing a figure, a girl, no older than Lily, with deep-set eyes that sparkled with fear. "Please, you have to help me." The girl pointed desperately toward a gaping hole behind the carousel, emanating a swirling, black vortex. The air around it twisted, sucking in bits of paper and candy wrappers, and a chill wrapped around Sarah. "What's down there?" Sarah asked, suspicion bubbling beneath her worry. "They're taking everyone," the girl shrieked, trembling as if she might shatter at any moment. "The carnival, it's not what it seems. You have to get out." Before Sarah could respond, the carousel began to screech, an angry response to the girl's warning. Castor, the carnival's ringmaster, appeared in a dark swirl, his face concealed beneath a towering hat adorned with grotesque masks. "What is this?" he growled, tossing a glare at Sarah. "Another uninvited guest? Leave her alone," Sarah shouted, stepping in front of her children. His laughter echoed ominously against the carousel. It twisted into something sharper, more sinister. "You should be careful. You don't know the rules? Danny asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 6 rules, Castor replied, his grin widening ominously. "Break them and you'll become part of the show." In an instant, the atmosphere turned suffocating, and shadows flickered around them, grasping at Sarah's ankles. "What do you want?" she demanded. "Nothing you could imagine, my dear," he said, drawing closer, the shadows coiling at his feet. "But you will play whether you want to or not." Suddenly, the carousel whirled faster, its lights flashing in a frenzied torment, drowning out the sound of Danny's terrified whimpers. Sarah's heart raced as she felt the pull of the shadows trying to separate her from her children. "Danny! Lily! Hold on to me!" she screamed, clutching them tightly. And then, within the blur of spinning colors, she caught a glimpse, a flash of a dying hope. Past the circling horses, a mirror-like surface revealed a reflection of her family in happier days, a vivid reminder of what could be lost. "No," she gasped, the realization crashing over her like waves of panic. "We have to go." But the shadows laughed, echoing the carnival's twisted joy. They surged, wrapping around her legs, dragging at her as she fought against their grip, desperate not to let go. 6 rules, Castor taunted again, his voice a sharp hiss. "Will you dare to find out what they truly mean?" As they stumbled backward, Sarah felt the teetering edge of the carnival's horrific magic closing in around them, threatening to pull them under forever. The distant winds of laughter grew closer, mingling with cries of those lost, and she could feel herself beginning to lose that fleeting connection to reality. Would they dare descend into darkness to uncover the truth? Or would they succumb to the very horror they sought to escape? "Don't let go!" she shouted, gripping her children tighter as the shadows began to pull them back toward their nightmare. They plunged into the maelstrom of chaos, the carousel now a cacophony of deafening laughter and agonized screams. The shadows clutched Sarah's legs like icy fingers, threatening to drag her into the gaping void behind the carousel. Desperate, she felt her resolve tightening, her grip tightening even more on Danny and Lily. "Mommy, I can't," Danny cried, his small fingers slipping against the cold sweat covering her palm. "Hold on, baby, I'm right here," she forced out through gritted teeth, her panic overwhelming. The cacophony roared, drowning out her words, mingling her fears with the festering nightmares of the carnival. "Don't let them take you." The girl's voice rang in her head as if she were a ghostly echo, urging them on. The swirling shadows, more solid now, were forming shapes, twisted faces, and clawed hands reaching out hungrily. The carousel screeched a terrible warning, its horses now illuminated with a grotesque glow. Castor watched with dark amusement, his smile a cruel crescent moon. "You think you can escape? I believe it's time for a little game with that," he snapped his fingers. The horses began to whirl faster, flickering in and out of sight. A chill raced down Sarah's spine as laughter twisted into a horrifying symphony. "Can't we just leave?" Lily whimpered, her voice barely cutting through the storm. "No," Sarah shouted back, panic giving her voice an edge. "We can't. We have to face it together." But how could she face such pervasive dread? A sudden punch of vulnerability flashed in her mind. What rules to follow? 6 rules? Each one like a chain attachment, tethering them to this place of dread. If they played Castor's game, would it lead to their escape or their doom? "Castor, what do you want from us?" Sarah yelled over the chaos, unwilling to let fear silence her. The shadows pulsed as she spoke, gathering around her. "Ah, a brave mother." Castor's voice slithered through the air, riddled with mockery. "You'll wish you'd kept silent just then." The lights above them flickered violently before plunging them into darkness. The world shrank, atoms of dread constricting around her, leaving them enveloped in pitch black. Sarah felt the shadows shift, cold and alive, crawling up her skin. The carousel's ghastly laughter echoed, vibrating through her bones. And then it stopped, silence wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Her heart raced, each beat a painfully loud reminder of their fragile existence. "Mom?" Danny's voice trembled, a lacing of fear that surged through the silence. "Right here," she whispered, hoping her voice didn't betray her fear. But an icy claw gripped her chest, whispering truths she dared not acknowledge. Then, just as suddenly as it vanished, light burst forth again, bright and blinding. They staggered, shielding their eyes, and when they dropped their hands, horror painted the scene before them. The carnival transformed, revealing nightmarish iterations of twisted rides and contorted faces, all of them grinning. "What?" Sarah gasped, taking a stark step back. The figures were no longer just shadows. They were former carnival-goers, encapsulated by a haze of despair, their own eyes wide and lifeless, forever trapped in a thunderous smile. "You see them?" Castor's voice echoed, a playful whisper. "The rules are simple. Follow them or join those who have broken them. Your fate is the same. Choose wisely." The ground beneath them trembled, shifting as the amusement park twisted and churned like a living entity. The carousel spun again, this time in reverse, shadows swirling outward like a dark wave. "Danny, Lily," she shouted into the growing darkness, her thoughts racing. "We need to find the rules, figure them out." "No, they will take you." The girl they had seen before reappeared, running towards them, panic etched on her young face. "If you don't leave now, you'll never be free." Castor laughed again, the sound slicing through the air. "Time is running out. Will you face the game, or will you flee?" But no, neither path is without peril. His words hung heavy in the air, chilling Sarah to her core. Her heart pounded like a drum, each thump felt like a countdown ticking down to doom. As they stood against the encroaching darkness, the swirling shadows beckoning, and their fate shrouded in uncertainty, Sarah knew one thing: they had to make a choice. But which path would lead them to safety, and which would shackle them forever? "Is this what you wanted, Sarah?" she echoed in her mind. "To expose the truth?" The question lingered in the twilight of terror as the carousel's pulse grew louder. The game was just beginning. The brilliant colors of the carnival flickered more violently than before, radiating a frantic energy that threatened to explode. Castor's laughter melded with the warped cries of trapped souls echoing through the air, a devastating symphony wrapping around Sarah and her children. They were caught, frightened, teetering on the edge of despair. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily whimpered, her fingers digging into Sarah's waist. "Me too, but we need to be brave," Sarah forced out, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a trapped bird. Focusing all her energy, she turned to Castor, whose chilling grin widened beneath the shadows he commanded. "What are the rules?" she shouted over the rising noise. "Tell me how to escape." An icy smirk crossed his face, dark and knowing. "Ah, seeker of truths, but every truth has a price. You forget the final rule binds you tighter than the others." Her mind raced, piecing it together like a jigsaw puzzle, while the carousel began to spin again, its haunting lights dancing madly in her blurry vision. "The sixth rule," she rasped, "is the key to our escape." A flicker of realization pulsed through her. Danny and Lily's hands tightened around her as they fought against the pure chaos swirling around them. "Hope is your only weapon," she whispered, remembering. "If we don't lose hope, we can break free. Yes, we believe in each other," she screamed, her voice breaking through the cacophony of despair. The shadows recoiled slightly as if her resolve had shaken them. "We know guilt will consume us. We can't let that happen," she continued, feeling the strength of their small family unit rallying beneath the weight of the carnival's fear. "We won't lose hope, or guilt will push through." The girl appeared again, her spectral form shimmering behind them. "Remember the way. Trust each other. That's the last rule. You must put all your fears aside. If you can love through the horror, you'll break free." It felt like a lighthouse piercing through the thickest fog as they held on to each other. "Danny, Lucy?" Sarah urged, locking eyes with her children, a fierce determination igniting inside her. "No matter what happens, we stick together. We trust each other." "But what if Danny began?" Panic thrumming in his voice. "No more what-ifs," Sarah said fiercely, her voice echoing against the mountains of sound that surrounded them. "We push through. Together." Suddenly, a cacophony erupted from the chaos as shadows raced to envelop them. Sarah gripped her children tighter, feeling the warmth of their tiny bodies fill her with courage. The rotating shadows swirled, moving to drag them back into that abyss of torment. "This is not who we are," she shouted, her voice echoing with the finality of her resolve. With that enraged declaration, a blinding light erupted from her, scattering the shadows. The merry-go-round began to sputter, the horses paused mid-gallop, and shrieks of fury erupted from the darkness as the carnival warped around her, folding in on itself as if responding to the power of her conviction. "Hold on," Sarah yelled as they charged through the carnival, forcing their way towards the foggy entrance illuminated by an otherworldly light breaking through the multitude of horrors. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of pleading screams around them swirling into a frenzy, but it only fueled their urgency. The hands of shadow and the echoes of lost souls stretched out to them, desperately calling for hope to be extinguished, but a fierce determination surged within Sarah's heart. As they tore through the last curtain of darkness, emerging into the night air, the shadows evaporated behind them like mist. She stumbled forward, pulling Danny and Lily close to her as they fell onto grass. The cool earth beneath them felt like a sanctuary compared to the horrors they had just escaped. The carnival loomed in the distance, taunting, but change was alive here, freedom glimmering like gunmetal against the stars. "Did we do it?" Danny asked, eyes bright with a fragile hope. "We did," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, the weight of their ordeal lifting. "We faced the darkness together. We are free." They embraced tightly, and for the first time that night, they felt safe as the carnival flickered behind them. A distant echo of its laughter turned into a familiar wind, a reminder that darkness had been confronted, and love had won. "Let us never look back," Sarah murmured, pulling them into the embrace of the night. But that victory came with a promise to never lose sight of who they were, no matter what fears or shadows lay ahead. Still holding on to each other, they turned and walked away, into the brighter unknown, stars lighting their path with the vibrant hues of newfound hope. But the carnival wasn't done yet. Shadows lingered, watching, waiting. The rules were still there, and perhaps, just perhaps, they would call again. Until then, the three of them held tightly through the dark. If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe right now. Don't miss out on the exclusive stories coming next, trust me. They're too wild to miss. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and make sure every scared soul out there can find this tale. Flood the comments section with your reactions, theories, and feelings about this chilling ending. I want to hear from you, and if you care about your friends, share this video with at least 5 of them who need to witness this roller coaster conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Real fans know this is the moment.